Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we are going to be talking about the Model 15 Combat Masterpiece. Now, this gun started out in 1947 as the Target Masterpiece, which was offered with a 6-inch barrel with a vent rib, partridge front sight, etc. Improved grips, things like that. And the barrel ribs, so you had a flat sighting plane. Nice features for a target revolver. Now, the FBI was pretty impressed with these, and they asked Smith & Wesson to produce a 4-inch version with a quick-draw front sight, a sloped ramp rather than the partridge front sight. And Smith & Wesson obliged, and the result was the K38 Combat Masterpiece. In 1957, this was renamed as the Model 15, as Smith & Wesson was rationalizing their naming conventions, and everything got a model number. And essentially, it has been the kind of the creme de la creme of Smith & Wesson's line for 50 years, really, from 1949 to 1999. Since 1999, there have been a couple of limited production editions of the K15, or the M15, Model 15, excuse me. But really, major production stopped in 1999, and in 1997 they'd switched to a few MIM parts, which are generally held to have taken the tone down a bit. Anyway, before we get too far into the weeds on this, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. This all costs money, and your contributions help more than you know. If you'd like to join my supporters on Patreon, there is a link in the description below. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses who have been very helpful to this channel. So, when I first started as a police officer, when dinosaurs walked the earth, the Combat Masterpiece, the Model 15, was very, very highly regarded as a duty weapon. And I've always rather fancied them. They're very nicely finished. The trigger pull is a cut above the standard Smith & Wesson production triggers, and they're just a really nice, very well turned out, lovely gun with a lot of very nice features. And we're going to discuss those further on the tabletop. So the standard barrel length of the Model 15 was 4 inches, but from 1964 to 1988, they also offered a 2-inch version. Given my predilection for Snubbies, it was pretty obvious which one I would go for. And originally, I was deeply underwhelmed with the plastic grips that came on the gun, because there were some issues with them that it turns out were not the fault of the grips. They were bad workmanship on the part of whoever had modified it. And this is that modification. Now, it's a fairly common thing to round the butt on the 2-inch guns, because square butt Snubby only makes so much sense. Not much. So this had been rounded off, and rather crudely by a previous owner. So I put the grips back on after discovering that they are in fact pretty good quality, and I modified them here and here, back here, to make them look nicer, which the original modifier didn't. And I relieved it here because these grips are short enough that my finger wraps underneath. So I have my pinky wrapped, and it's relieved to make that very comfortable for me. Makes for a very comfortable, secure grip. And of course it is a 6-shot 38 special. As you can see, it has the flat rib over the frame. On the 4-inch, it would be on the barrel too, but you know, the sight begins where the barrel does. And you can see there is a yellow plastic insert. The sights are really quite good. And the adjustable rear sight, of course, the hallmarks of the Combat Master series. Combat Masterpiece series, Combat Masters at Detonics. And it has, of course, the wide, very aggressively serrated trigger spur to facilitate single action. Now, the single action pull, according to the handy dandy Lyman trigger gauge, is 3 pounds. You wouldn't guess it because it is so crisp and so smooth that it really feels more like 2 pounds. The double action pull is very nice, and it's 8 pounds, which isn't extremely light, but it's not heavy either, and it is super, super smooth. Smith & Wesson's current custom shop could take a page out of this book. And it is beautifully finished. This gun was not fired much. You can see there's just a ghost of a turn line just starting here, and the bluing is gorgeous. Now it does have the serrated trigger because that was very much in vogue, and is a holdover from the Target Masterpiece because target shooters favored the serrated trigger for single action shooting. It is suboptimal for double action shooting, but it doesn't really bother me. And normally I would smooth that out, but in this case, I don't think I'll bother. So it is just a superbly crafted gun and just really nicely finished, beautiful fit, and just really, really sweet gun. Very accurate and very nice to shoot. You know, it's kind of heavy in the way of steel frame revolvers, but that really isn't a deficit in this case because it just makes it that much nicer to shoot, because it soaks up the recoil nicely. Now this is in 38 special, and you can fire a limited amount of plus P ammunition out of it, but it's not highly recommended that you give it a steady diet of such. Smith & Wesson says if you're going to fire a lot of plus P through it, you should probably send it to them to be checked out every 3,000 rounds or so. So I'm not really worried about it. Now, this being a 2-inch snub nose gun, I'm not really worried about plus P ammunition. Not really going to be shooting plus P ammunition. This is mostly going to be just a range toy and target gun. Although, honestly, I would not feel badly underarmed as a civilian carrying this piece, and certainly the way it shoots is confidence inspiring. But just a beautiful gun. Now, this gun, of course, it's in absolute terms, its collector's value has been damaged by having the butt rounded off, although, again, this is a common period modification on the 2-inch guns. It doesn't bother me. I have my usual bevy of modifications that I make to a carry revolver. I'm not going to make them to this one. It's a piece of history. It is very much what it is and what it was meant to be. And I appreciate it on that basis, so I won't be bobbing the hammer, relieving the trigger guard, or any of the things I usually do. Now, this gun has not been fired very much, and I can tell that because well-worn-in old Smith & Wessons have a distinctive feel to the trigger that this lacks. It is not worn in. So a trigger job is probably in this gun's future, where basically I'll just be smoothing things up, and, you know, I don't mess with the mainspring because I want to make sure it goes bang every time I pull the trigger. And altering that can affect that. But various other small modifications and a lot of internal polishing, and I think this will be I think this will go from being an excellent trigger to being a superb trigger. And this is not a gun I have any use for. I mean, there it is. But there are some things that you want to own just because they are the epitome of what they are. And this is really, I mean, the 2-inch Model 15 is peak Snubby. It's just really about as good as it got. And it is a very practical item, but it is also, to me, a celebration of the craft of American gun manufacturing from a specific period, and is just, it is a thing of joy in and of itself. So, I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.